out there in Cyberland, guys. J Cherry here. Jennifer Sparks here. I said J Cherry for years. That was the name that I was using. I still use. What am I talking about? Well, my radio days. So I'm a little befuddled because it's live in real time, you know, and I'm in Connecticut. And oh, what a story. I do have to share our stories that I do have to share. And hopefully I'm coming across well on the platforms that I hope to be streaming on. I see I am successfully on Twitter, Facebook, Rumble, and YouTube in a couple of places. My pirate channel and my recently restored YouTube channel. So hi out there, folks, in this almost kind of like springish day. It's definitely warmer, at least here in New England. So, you know, today I've been thinking a lot about Connecticut and how it is the legislative season and how difficult the legislative season is for anyone paying attention to what's happening. So let's just get right into it with a couple of things. So there's this, I'm going to bring up my screen here to share with you guys in a second. Hold on while I pull that up. So there was a press conference yesterday, and the leaders up at the Capitol, including our Attorney General, William Tong, was up at the Capitol. And I watched all that press release. I wrote an article in my Substack that you can find at Substack, and I did put a link. I was able to get links into Twitter as well as Facebook today with the show notes, and I'll later upload this, hopefully into the Substack. It sometimes takes me a day or two, but anyway. So there's a press conference yesterday, and it's really disturbing how our Attorney General refers to a part of the population here in Connecticut. Connecticut is a blue state, but there are conservatives in this state. There are people in this state who voted for Trump. I see quite a few Trump signs in my neighborhood. There are quite a few people in this state who, are conservative and voted for Trump. And the way that our legislative leaders speak is concerning. It's very divisive. And I'm going to play you a little bit. I have it queued up, so I'm going to play you a little bit. It's very divisive, and it promotes, so our elected leaders, right? Unlike private individuals, you can boast your opinions publicly or whatever. You could decide not to associate with, and be very partisan and not want to talk to your Republican neighbor or your Democrat neighbor. I mean, as a private citizen, you have these choices, right? As a public servant, you represent all of the people in your state, and it's upon you as a public servant to not divide your population, but to create an environment where all voices feel represented. Even in a place like Connecticut, where we're under a supermajority. You would think that the elected leadership, Connecticut, we have major problems with election fraud, which I'm going to talk about that too. So here we have this press conference, and they're talking about William Tong. This happened yesterday. William Tong is talking about President Trump and his first month in office and all the things that are going on with the Doge and Elon Musk. And there's a whole bunch of stuff we could talk about that. I'm not a fan of rule by executive order. I will say on a personal level that I really like what I see being exposed, but I also could see a place where there can be concerns about having Elon Musk get access to sensitive documents and stuff like that. I definitely think that we should have discourse in that area. I have a lot of concerns about things of that nature, but that's not what the show's about. So I could see where they'd want to have a press conference. They'd want to talk about some of these unprecedented things and maybe address some legitimate questions by constituents and have a more balanced approach to dealing with the new administration and not being so full of this rhetoric. So let me show you something, and we'll get into talking about this and playing a couple of clips about why I feel really concerned about the language that Attorney General William Tong uses toward a towards the minority of the population here in Connecticut being a conservative voice under a super majority, because that's what a minority is. It's when you have less of a population. You know what I'm saying? So you can have minorities, because sometimes people get emotive about words and don't see like how the English language operates. But anyway, so just to be clear, because I see some wacky things these days that are actually quite astonishing. So okay, so I wrote an article yesterday, and I'll get into that too. But I first wanted to talk about this article that I woke up to in my email. Now, I'm signed up to everybody's stuff. So this comes out of from the Democrats. This is called the Capitol Dispatch. And what I found so interesting or shocking about this is that, not a joke, Connecticut conservatives taking cues from white supremacist group, right? That's a pretty intense headline. Like, you read that and you immediately like recoil, right? Like, oh, that's ugly, yuck, white supremacy, right? So what they're talking about is the Yankee Institute. And the Yankee Institute is not a white, well, they're not talking about the Yankee Institute here. They're talking about this, it's called the Federation for Fair Immigrant Reform, or something like that. That's the acronym. It's called FAIR. The organization is called FAIR, and I'm going to show you a link to their website. So they're talking about this organization here. Let's go. This is where their website is here. This is FAIR. This is the organization they're talking about, calling it a white supremacist organization. And, their mission, their values, they're a group of people who want fair immigration reform. Fair immigration reform seems pretty reasonable. And says, as concerned Americans, we share responsibility to look at the future and envision where current policies may lead. Immigration is no different. Immigration policies can determine what kind of America future generations will inherit: livable or overcrowded, successful or overburdened. While we see our obligations to help the less fortunate around the world, we also know that irresponsible border policies can undermine our own nation's ability to be a successful change agent for the human race. FAIR engages in community outreach to inform affected communities of how national immigration policies affect their own situations, and invites them to engage in meaningful dialogue on how to shape immigration policies for the 21st century and beyond. As a nonpartisan public interest organization with a support base comprising nearly 50 private foundations, this is where they get their money from, FAIR is free of party loyalties and special interest connections. So that's what FAIR is saying about themselves. They want to have dialogue. They want reform. So, seems pretty reasonable, right? So here, what we have, so the Yankee Report published a report by FAIR pointing out how much money is being paid to illegal immigration in Connecticut, which is a sanctuary state. Now, people get really mad and emotional about saying the word illegal immigration. What does illegal immigration mean? Illegal immigration is when, everybody has immigration rules and things like that. You know what? Hold on a second. I'm going to pause that for 1 second. Hold on. Sorry about that interruption. I really apologize about that. That's the unfortunate thing of being live in real time when you have 20-year-olds just walking on you and you're not expecting it. Anyway, back to where I was. Back to FAIR. So FAIR is an organization, but if you look at what Attorney Tong was saying about, I'm sorry, let me go back to the Capitol Dispatch as I regroup where my brain is. Okay, here we go. So this is the community, the Capitol Dispatch. And it's really a concerning headline. And they're talking about this organization called FAIR, which is what Yankee Institute was reporting on. And so what happened was, like, listen to this article. Let me just read you a little bit of it. So Connecticut Republicans and the far-right advocacy group. So why can't you just say Connecticut Republicans and the Yankee Institute or the advocacy group Yankee Institute? Why does that language always have to, it's like divisive. The Yankee Institute spent much of late February circulating claims about the budgetary impact of undocumented immigrants, which stemmed from an organization designed as a hate group by the Southern Poverty Law Center. Right? So their hate group, says the Southern Poverty Law Center, right? So what's really interesting here was a quote. So here it is. I didn't get to it yet. So the claim that they claim, there's a typo there. That happens to me too, so I can't really call them out on that. So anyway, they claim that undocumented immigrants cost Connecticut some $1.3 billion. Has been dismissed as inaccurate by Governor Ned Lamont, who told WTNH it sounded totally fanciful. Okay. And so according to WTNH, the Yankee Institute, which promoted that figure on the weekly This Week in Connecticut show, did not reach out-of-state physical analysis at the Poverty Office of Policy and Management for information related to physical impact of undocumented immigrants. So where did that number come from? In Thursday's press release, the Yankee Institute admitted the figure came from a 2023 report by the Federation for American Immigration Reform, or FAIR. If that name sounds familiar, no, it really didn't until now. It didn't sound familiar. It wasn't like in my head that this organization is like, if that name sounds familiar. Okay, so, all right, let's keep going. So if that name sounds familiar, it's because it's the Southern Poverty Law Center. Where did I go? I lost my place here. So it's designated. I'm sorry. Here it goes. So if that name sounds familiar, it might be because FAIR was designated a hate group by the Southern Poverty Law Center. That's due to FAIR's ties to a white supremacist group and eugenicists. Beginning with the group's founder, John Tannum, according to the Southern Poverty Law Center, and they just go on to bash who they say are the founders of this organization. It came out with a report saying how much money, it did it through all the country, and it broke it down to Connecticut. $1.3 billion is being spent on illegal immigration here in Connecticut. So this article that came out of the Capitol Dispatch, which is Democrat, it's a Democrat publication, or from the, I believe even like the Senate Democrats are putting it out. So it's just called the Capitol Dispatch, and it comes in my email. So, you know, it's pretty much, it doesn't say if it's Democrat or not, or maybe it's trying to promote itself as bipartisan. Not really sure, but I'm signed up to all these different emails and things like that, newsletters, to try to keep an idea of what's going on. I was really disturbed by this article. Now, who is the Southern Poverty Law Center? Now, back in the day, you could ask me like 10 years ago, I would like, you know, I knew of the Southern Poverty Law Center, and I knew that they would say there are certain organizations or groups. And I thought they were like a watchdog group to look out and, you know, keep everybody aware of nefarious groups that are doing bad things. Well, interestingly enough, they're not bad at all. And they, in fact, they smear a lot of people. And there's quite a bit of controversy about the Southern Poverty Law Center that I want to get into right now. So let's take a look at some of the controversy. Now, this is an old article that I came across that I'm going to share with you guys. This is an old article. It's from the Social Contract Press. I don't even know if this person still is writing. You know, the last they were writing on it was 2019. It looks like it's a blog. So this was really, really interesting because it goes into the history of the Southern Poverty Law Center. Now, the article I read you from the Capital Dispatch was really, really scathing of the organization FAIR, which I showed you here. Look at the headline. So let's go right over here. So this is a Capital Dispatch. This is the headline coming out of Connecticut. So, not a joke, Connecticut conservatives taking cues from white supremacist group. Okay, that's their headline. So divisive, so like this inflammatory statement. What is the purpose of that, right? You would think that these elected officials, even if they're not supportive of the other side of the aisle, to just like use this language is kind of surprising, right? It doesn't. Would this been happening like a while ago, like maybe even 10 years ago? I don't know. How did we get here? But so they say this, and they cite the reason that they say this is the Southern Poverty Law Center. But the Southern Poverty Law Center was founded by two men who figured out a means to start a nonprofit and make a lot of money by getting people really like shook up about supposed white supremacist groups. So take a listen to this. The Southern Poverty Law Center recalls an observation about the Holy Roman Empire, i.e. the neither Holy nor Roman nor Empire. Aside from its location in Alabama, the SPLC is about as southern as William Teshmesh's sermon, I'm not sure who that is, has little to do with assisting poor people and much to do with enriching its already healed directors. And as far for law, its strident advocacy on behalf of illegal aliens suggests that the rule of law is not exactly one of its top priorities. The SPLC founder, its lawyer Morris Dees, when he began his career in business partner Millard Fuller, remarked, "Morris and I shared the overriding purpose of making a lot of money. We were not particular about how we did it. And in 1961, Morris earned cash by doing some legal work for the Ku Klux Klan. Shortly thereafter, he claims he made a conversion experience against racial prejudice. Even so, he did not start the Southern Poverty Law Center until 1971, when, as many observers have noted, it was clear which side he won the civil rights struggle." So with Dee's tireless self-promotion, the Southern Poverty Law Center's influence and fundraising capacities grew considerably. Its modus operandi was scaring, uses little old liberals into thinking that Klansmen were lurking under every bed and bedsheet and then pitching them for money. And the money kept on coming into the 90s. So then after the the Southern Poverty Law Center set up an operation in Montgomery, Alabama, and a friendly relationship with the staff of the local newspaper, the Montgomery Advertiser. And so they went on to build themselves up quite a reputation, but had a lot of questionable activities. And so despite their questionable activities, many news outlets report its press releases, particularly about the number of alleged hate groups, as if they were gospel. So this organization has a lot of checkered past. And this article is really old, and obviously this person's got an opinion about the Southern Poverty Law Center. So you could say, okay, well, this is what this person says, right? So this was written in 2010. Now, they were having controversy with claims of harassment, sexual harassment. They were all like, they call themselves like they're advocates for racial justice, and this that was run by white wealthy men who were getting a lot of money through this this organization, the Southern Poverty Law Center, and being able to get all this money through donations and to being like a charity. And really what they ended up doing was creating something called Hate Watch. And so it really hurt a lot of people's careers. And it still is to this day something that you'll hear our legislative leaders using the Southern Poverty Law Center as like a factual, legitimate organization when it's marred in controversy from its inception to now. So this is an older article, and like, remember, so the founders was an attorney for the Ku Klux Klan and had a conversion aha moment, right? So then they start the Southern Poverty Law Center, and now that article was written in 2019, and we'll go over here because this is an NPR article, so that we'll get a more look into what NPR has to say, because NPR is more slanted toward the liberal bias, correct? So after allegations of toxic culture, Southern Poverty Law Center tries to move forward. So they got in a lot of trouble for harassment, that they didn't have anyone that was of any black people working for them in positions of leadership, but they used people of color to promote and get their donations so that they could build this like a really big kind of empire built on smearing alternative voices they don't agree with. And they've made a lot of money in the process of doing it. But this article just came out in 2019, right before COVID. Okay. And so then we even have here, they got in a lot of trouble in 2015 where they had to look at this this is a public apology. And this is all in my show notes that you can read for yourself. This was to Ben Carson. So anyone that they didn't like, so what would happen is all this money comes into this organization, and they become like a hitman for political entities to say, hey, that's bad. Like Moms for Liberty has definitely been a target by the Southern Poverty Law Center. And the Moms for Liberty has been a target. It's like, how do you turn Moms and Liberty into a hate group? But anyway, so they did that. So they're also, are calling this organization for this organization called FAIR for Immigration Reform, a white supremacist group, which is implying that this is like this hate group and that it's something that is nefarious, which is really concerning. We're talking, this isn't coming from like somebody who is doing a podcast and they have a conservative slant and they're saying this and putting this out there. This is coming from our elected, leaders who are also touting this language about their constituents and people that live in this state. And it's very concerning when you hear elected leaders talk like that, because then this is like a top-down process where you have the leaders who should represent kind of a more balanced interpretation of things that are happening in the current events and happening in the moment, and realize that Connecticut isn't all just, a one-track mind like it's everybody thinks like they do. And there are people who are conservative who are very uncomfortable with a lot of the things going on. That's why Trump won. And he won by a pretty big margin, and also turned Connecticut more red than it's been, though it's still a supermajority. So coming from that stance, and you lump all these people and all their concerns into like it's hate and never address any of the issues. We want to talk about that $1.3 billion without being screamed at and called racist, because the Southern Poverty Law Center says that the information that Yankee Institute published. Now, Yankee Institute is not some hate group or far right-wing group. Just call them, you could say, a conservative watchdog group, So, but it always has to be these extremes, right? And I think that we are in a really weird place in history where, everything is weaponized. So Excuse me while I clear my throat. All right, so let's move on over here. There's another article that I want to share with you on the Southern Poverty Law Center. Oh, did I not put that up here? I think it is here. So they had a lot of controversy. They had another controversy in June of 2022 where the Southern Poverty Law Center admitted to wrongdoing in a case that involved a Muslim woman, and they had to make another apology. They had to apologize to Ben Carson. They had to apologize to here, let's go to this one. I don't think I pulled this one up. Okay, so the founder, Morris D's internal email highlight issue with harassment and discrimination. Here, let me show you this. So this is Morris D's. And so this is Morris D's. This is coming out of the Alabama Political Reporter. Now, their organization was based out of Alabama. And like the first article that I shared with you is like, they're no more Southern. They're not. They're not Southern. They were two lawyers, founded the Southern Poverty Law Center, and found out that they can make a lot of money going after, being like this, defender of rights and liberties, which sounds good for, immigrants and people of color and all that kind of good stuff. Like they're looking out for the underdog, but they're not. They're not looking out for the underdog. They're never looking out for the underdog. They always say they're looking out for the underdog. It's like, I think any nonprofit that's like, oh, we're a charity that are doing the best that we can for the poor. I think, no, of course, there are charities out there, but I am so like, I'm just so skeptical of these non-governmental organizations and these nonprofit organizations that come with this, they're going to do something wonderful for the community or for the underdog, because usually when you peel the onion, it's never what it seems. But this particular organization causes a lot of division in our country and also fuels the fire of what I'd say is like really concerning rhetoric coming out of our Attorney General at the press conference yesterday. And the way, instead of addressing the issue, look, Attorney General Tong, look, this is how the Connecticut citizens feel. We're not racist, we're not bigots, right? But we really would like to know what you did with that $1.3 billion instead of screaming on the microphone that this white supremacist group that's full of hate and it's racist and it's all full of lies. Is how dare we ask, because there are people in our own community who need help and who are being ignored. We cannot afford to take in every illegal immigrant. This process is not, every country has borders. There's nothing wrong with borders. It's an illusion to think that we can live in a borderless world. Why don't you just go open up your house to anybody that wants to come in? Why not just open it up? You've got extra rooms. You got an extra room in your house. I mean, they were literally talking about this to people and nudging people to like open up their home and have strangers come in. We can't do that. You have to be realistic. We cannot save the world until we clean up what's in our own backyard. What about Hartford? The city of Hartford is a mess. What about Hartford? You have all this money, $1.3 billion. What about veterans? What about them? What about the mentally ill homeless people that we have on the streets right here who don't have housing or help or any care? What about them? So we're spread exceptionally thin, and people want an answer. They don't want to be insulted and called some white supremacist group, when your group, the very group that you are using to justify calling the immigration reform group racist and white supremacist. You got this guy here, Morris D's, who internal emails showed harassment and discrimination, and then to cover up their image in 2019, to change it up, to try and switch it up, they hire this lady to be the head of it. And he kind of steps down to the back. But the two men who founded the Southern Poverty Law Center did so because they found a way to make easy money. And that's what it all comes down to. And so now it's like a smear campaign. And they get caught all the time and they're mirrored in controversy. And it becomes part of an arsenal of this propaganda. Total, utter propaganda that our government is turning around and using on its own people to promote its narrative. So let's take a look at Attorney General William Tong. I got him all queued up here. At least I thought I did. Hold on a second while I pull that up. So Attorney General William Tong, I'm focusing on him because he's like the Attorney General, right? And you would think that as Attorney General, that you would think that he would be able to, you think that he would be able to represent his people in a more balanced way. He would be able to, I don't know, let's take a listen. Take a listen to what he says. And just, I was so disturbed by him specifically. Now, I'm not going to play the whole press conference, but earlier, or around this point, he talks about how somebody made a threat to him. And I think that is a terrible thing to do. I don't know what the details of that. He was very elusive about it in the press conference. But there was a recent situation where Senator Duff played a phone call or somebody called swearing and whatnot. You're going to get way more done if you never use like threatening language. Violence is never the answer. We have to come at these elected officials with the truth. We have to we could be, there's a word for it. And I'm still like, we can have righteous indignation, and like not be threatening or make threats. There's a big difference to how we deal with these folks. And now we don't know who this person is. We never promote or advocate for violence, but they want to put that narrative. And that's what I find really scary is they want to put this narrative that these are white supremacists, that these are dangerous, like Ku Klux Klan-y type that don't like immigrants. He's giving this narrative that it's not about the illegal immigration and the fact that our country and our state is being overwhelmed by the financial burden of how do you take care of these people that are coming in here in such a flow that we have no real way of dealing with it. And then we're spreading ourselves so thin that we're not taking proper care of the very people that are already here who are citizens who need help and services that we're not taking care of. So sure, let's have a whole bunch of more people coming here. There is a plan for this. It's called I wrote about that in my Substack. It's called the Great Replacement. I got an article about that in there, and it was written by the UN. And the reason that in that article that was written in 2010 was that we were having low birth rates, so they're going to have an influx of people from other parts of the world into Europe and the United States, which is happening. So it's really interesting. It was in 2000s. I'm sorry, it was in 2000, not 2010. So in 2000, the year 2000, the UN comes out with a white paper talking about the Great Replacement and this great migration of illegal immigrants. And it's used the word illegal immigrants. I'm using that word because we have a legal process to come into this country, which Tong himself used. Okay, so Tong, who prides himself on he's an immigrant. I'm an immigrant too, Tong. I think most of us are. Many of us are a third, fourth, fifth generation immigrants. This was the great melting pot. So he makes it seem like there's this white boogeyman that wants to stop all the bad immigrants from coming. And it's not the case. He's mischaracterizing his own constituents. So let's take a listen. Some reason. I don't know why we're not playing. Hold on, let me see if yeah. So I'm going to have to just cue it up to that point. So bear with me. I might have lost the exact spot where I wanted to catch him. Here we go. Now I want, hold on.
Yeah, can I just add one more thing?
Sure.
Children of undocumented people. So 72% of the children in this study, 72% of the education costs in this study are for American citizens. Okay, they are by definition, by the 14th Amendment, not undocumented people. 50% of the education and healthcare costs in this study is for children with only one unauthorized parent, or one parent who doesn't have legal status. So that means there are many citizen children and many children in the study who do have parents with legal status. This study assumes that all children of undocumented people or recent immigrants can't speak English or have low English proficiency. Not true. How do I know? Because it wasn't true for me. It assumes that all children of recent immigrants and undocumented people are low income and attend schools that are predominantly low income. Also not true. It includes all the costs of immigration enforcement, not just against undocumented people. Here's a dirty secret, okay? There are people who have legal status who also face law enforcement for immigration reasons, okay? And so this includes all law enforcement action related to immigration, undocumented, legal, or otherwise. And this study does not include any of the costs, the hundreds of billions of dollars, if not trillions of dollars, it would cost to pull people out of this economy, to remove them, and then think about it, the exponential cost of destroying their families. What's that cost? Is it even knowable? So let's stop with this number. It is false, it is fake, it is wrong, it's a lie, it's hateful, and let's not use it anymore. And with that,
so there you have that. There's Tong, and he's irate about this, the report that the Yankee Institute released about $1.3 billion being spent toward illegal immigration. And what I find about his rhetoric, it's concerning, guys, and we need to pay attention to everything that's coming out of the legislative body, because this is like how we end up finding that, you know, they'll start to put laws together to say you can't criticize or ask the government questions because it's hateful to do so. And that you wanting to know where that $1.3 billion is going toward illegal immigrants and why you're making this state a sanctuary state when we can't even take care of our own main cities, which is outrageously insane. And I just, wow. Just wow on all that. So they're using the Southern Poverty Law Center to just, they're not giving any real explanation about where this money is. There's no real discussion about it. It's just that you don't get to ask, and if you do, it's hateful, and I don't want to hear it come out of your mouth again. That's our Attorney General. Meanwhile, our energy prices are skyrocketing, and then you have here, where, let's go over to here. Let's talk a little bit about some of the election fraud happening in Connecticut. Where is our Attorney General? So where is the Attorney General with this ballot fraud that's happening right in our state? And in that press conference, they also, the Secretary of State goes into saying that no, there's no illegal immigrants who are voting. Well, this guy here, he's saying that there's some information that, yes, in fact, there are allegations that there were forged ballots. So Councilman Alfredo Castello, 53, who represents the 136th district, was arrested on February 21st and charged with multiple counts of misrepresenting absentee ballot eligibility requirements and improper possession of ballots and envelopes. Let us read that again, because I don't think our Attorney General, hello, William Tong, wait a minute. So even in this press conference, and I'll pull it back so you can listen to the Secretary of the State, you almost feel like you're in two alternative worlds. So this just happened. Okay? This is just happening. Connecticut is making, this is out of Epoch Times. So here we go. Councilman Alfredo Castello, 53, who represents the state's 136th district, was arrested on February 21st and charged with multiple counts of misrepresenting absentee ballot eligibility requirements and improper possession of ballots and envelopes. I'm innocent, he told Epoch Times on February 23rd. I'm following the orders of the Democratic Party. This is what they tell us to do, to get out the vote. Then we're criminalized. Oh, really? So Democratic Party Vice Chair Wanda Geter Patake, 68, along with Councilwoman Maria Pereira, 57, and Jasmarie Melendez, who both represent the 138th district, were also arrested after turning themselves in on February 21st. They did not respond to requests for comments by the publication. So Wanda was the vice chair of the Democratic Party to get out the vote. Costello said in a phone interview that's her job. She should get an award for getting the little votes that we got out there to make a difference. I'm sorry. I read that okay. He really said that. So, yeah, she should get an award for ballot stuffing. Is how are we supposed to take that? You see the circus that is Connecticut? This is the circus that is Connecticut. This is like Clown World material. So in addition to multiple counts of misrepresenting absentee ballots, eligibility requirements, and improper possession of ballots and envelopes. Like, guys, look, absentee ballots, they gotta go. Like, I don't understand. I mean, yeah, if you're not in the country on a very limited basis, I get it. But, like, all of a sudden, since COVID, now everybody's got to have an absentee ballot. Look, I was a poll worker. I was a poll worker. I learned the ins and outs of being at the election process. I was going to be a moderator, and then I decided I didn't want to do that anymore. I got a lot of experience out of it. It was very interesting. But one of my jobs as a poll worker during a presidential election was to be what they call a runner. So literally, this was the coolest thing, and I think this is great because this really helps with people who are disabled, who aren't well, who can't get out, and they want to get out to vote. I get that. Everybody should vote, right? So I was a runner at the polls, and my job was to go to the curb. So we'd be on the curb, and what we would do is people would pull up, and this was for people who couldn't get into the poll to vote. So they pull up, as like drive-through voting. They pull up, they give us their ID, and there would be a Republican and a Democrat, and we would both walk that back to pick up a ballot. And so you always had to have a buddy system so you weren't ever in possession of the ballot by yourself, because that's how important it was. So every time somebody pulled up to the car or pulled up to the curb, you would go in, you would take their ID, you'd walk it in with your buddy system. The two of you would go in and you would get the ballot, and the two of you would come back out. You would give the voter the ballot. You would stand on the curb, the Democrat, Republican, wait there, let the voter vote. If there were two people in the car, three people in the car, you get all the people in the car their IDs. You'd go and you'd get their ballots. Then you'd get them back, and you would go and you would give it to another another poll worker who would take that. And you still had your buddy system. They would take that ballot from you. It was in an envelope. You weren't allowed to see it. They would put it in an envelope in the car. They would give you back the ballot. You would walk the ballot back into at the register, and then you would put that ballot would be counted and put through. In my town, we have paper ballots and a machine that takes the ballot. So you'd bring it back in, and then they would take it. You'd come back out, bring them their sticker. In fact, there was a bus from the senior center, a whole bus full of senior citizens. They were the sweetest people ever. I got on the bus. We were both like me and the other representative for the other party. I'm the Republican. They were the Democrat. So it they were on the bus with me. We got all of their IDs. We went out and we got them their ballots, and it was a little complicated because there was a bunch of them, but it was all done really well. In fact, we had a few more election workers come out so it just didn't get too crazy. But you see how much detail was put into just getting those ballots out to them. But they didn't. So why do you need absentee ballots? You can pull up to the curb and you can vote. It's not impossible. They like, this is crazy. So absentee ballots leave us so vulnerable to election fraud. And that is just the tip of the election fraud iceberg in Connecticut. Connecticut needs a whole overload, or like a whole huge audit. Big time. The Yukon and all the machines. I mean, we got some serious problems, Connecticut. Serious problems. So this is all over the news. And we have, what is our attorney, what are they doing about it? Nothing. In fact, they say it's just fine. It's working as is intended to. So we still have this super majority in Connecticut and an election system that is flawed. Do you feel comfortable about this, guys? Do you feel good about the fact that there's more arrests for the election in Bridgeport, which is a pretty big deal? And here's another question that I have. Why is Mayor Ganem, who's a convicted felon, by the way, I mean, like, come on. This is a circus that is Connecticut. So Ganem, who's a convicted felon, we had a hallelujah, come to Jesus moment now, where he's all good, and the people of Bridgeport want to have him back, when he is like a convicted felon for he's stealing, basically. He's not, how does that happen? How is he the mayor, and how come he's still there? It is such a huge sore thumb in Connecticut, and it just goes and shows how far gone our election process actually is. And that's just the tip of the iceberg in Connecticut. It's a snake pit. We have voter rolls with people in buildings that nobody lives in, but there are people that live there. People move away and they move out of state, but they were registered as, whatever voters. And then they're still counted as voting. So we need a real audit. We need some real stuff to go on here. Let me get deeper into that. That's a huge, big topic. So, also with that, so we got the election fraud going on. Here, let me get back to, I want to play you the Secretary of the State. So let me just do this. So I want to play you the Secretary of the State before I talk about one last thing, and I'm getting over my hour. Which seems to happen with Connecticut because there's so much to talk about. So far today we've covered the Southern Poverty Law Center and the way they smear people, and that our legislative body uses information from the Southern Poverty Law Center to dismiss reports about where money is being spent on illegal immigrants that are here in the state of Connecticut. And taxpayers have a right to know about this. It's not hateful. It's not racist. It's just basic fiscal responsibility. We are struggling here. There are people in this state that need services too. Then we got election fraud. And according to the Secretary of the State, everything is just fine. It's just fine. People voted. And when she says that, it cracks me up because there's so much controversy with our elections. People voted to have more access to absentee ballots. I didn't, but okay. We've got it now codified into law. And we've got a situation here where election fraud is rampant. Let's take a look at what the Secretary of State has to say. Now, bear with me. I'm going to try and get it as close to her as possible, but CTN doesn't make it that easy. I want to really play the part where she talks about how they've never had any problems with absentee ballots and illegal immigrants voting. Or people who aren't supposed to be voting. It's a good question because they just had this huge controversy in Bridgeport. I mean, give me a break.
And tell them that Connecticut does not need their interference when it comes to our election process, and we certainly don't need more unfunded mandates. We have consistently chosen to move forward and protect the rights of all voters, and I, for one, don't plan to go back, and I hope you don't either. Thank you.
Let me back that up a bit because I wanted to catch her a little bit more. Let me back her up a little bit. Apologize. This is the controller here is a little tricky to use in real time. Here we go.
Any election worker who may make a mistake and register someone without the required paperwork, up to 5 years in prison and/or a fine. And I have to ask this question. If election integrity is the goal, why has the new administration, at the same time they've proposed the SAVE Act, shut down CISA? If you haven't heard of CISA, that's the Department of Homeland Security that oversees election security. CISA has been a great assistance to us here in Connecticut. When registrars came to me last year worried about their own safety, guess who did de-escalation training for every registrar and town clerk in the state? CISA. When we were concerned about scenarios.
So you see the type of fear that they try to bolster up. So she's talking about the SAVE Act, where they're, Trump is proposing that they have, identification, and you're in person and you vote, and it's a crime to aid in election fraud. Like, really? So I would love to ask her, Stephanie Thomas, would this guy that you're saying he didn't know, because he's saying that he's just doing what you guys were telling him to do, or what his party chair, Wanda Geter Pataki, was saying to do. So he says he didn't do anything wrong, but he was tampering with ballots and then filling out ballots. And there's accusations that they were putting the wrong party. And, you can't have these poll workers, election workers, whatever, going door to door with a political ideology and getting people to vote and helping them fill out the paperwork. This is absolutely crazy. This is what absentee ballots lead to. No, we have an election day. Everybody comes on election day. Like I said, I worked at the polls. I worked on the curb. I was a runner. I'd run the ballots in and out to the people who couldn't come in. It was a great service that my town provided. I think all towns could provide that. We need in-person elections with paper ballots that are counted, because you can't have these computer systems going up through Yukon or these absentee ballots and have legitimate elections that people can trust. How do you have that? And so now in Connecticut, citizens have real questions on their hands. And now, what is that going to be a crime too, to talk about it? We can't talk about the problems that we're having. We're having problems with illegal immigration. We can't afford to do this. Every country has borders for a reason. Are you just going to open up your house to just anybody because you want to help the less fortunate? We cannot do that. You save the world by saving yourself first. You have to fix your own backyard. We need to take care of our own homeless people. We need to take care of our own poor people, our veterans. We need to take care of our elderly. We need to take care of our own state and our own issues before we can even think about having charity and taxpayer dollars going to people who are not paying back and giving into the system. Now, I know there are dreamers or undocumented people who've been here for a long time. Still, just go through the process. Go through the process. I don't know. It's a very tangled, crazy problem that we've had for a long time, and we need to be able to talk about it. We need to be able to talk about it. That is really important. And then he says, Tom goes on and on about America runs on Duncan, back to the immigration thing. America runs on Duncan and undocumented workers, as if it's okay to use illegal immigrants for cheap labor. That's a good thing for illegal immigrants and American citizens. It hurts both. And then there's no discussion ever about the election fraud or what's going on with, what about Ganem? Shouldn't he be investigated? Why is he still mayor of Bridgeport? How the heck is this working? And so Bridgeport is under a major, like, developer renaissance. They are gobbling up the property in Bridgeport faster than you could say inflation. So these big giant developers are coming into Bridgeport, they're buying up the property, and they're gentrifying the area. They want to make Bridgeport a new up-and-coming city, and they're kicking people out of affordable housing to do it. Okay? This is happening in Bridgeport. I wrote about that in my Substack. I've been covering the housing crisis. Another major issue in Connecticut where you never get real help. They just shut you up and say, oh, you're a racist. I asked Senator Rojas a question about fair share recently, which is a bill that they try to pass here in Connecticut that's modeled after legislation in New Jersey, fair share. New Jersey and Connecticut have some of the highest property taxes in the country. New Jersey being the worst. And New Jersey is still embroiled in lawsuits over legislation that they passed in New Jersey that is something called fair share, where the towns have to take on the fair share of affordable housing, which is a scam. They always use like something that captures your emotions, you know, something like they weaponize altruism so that you are sitting there like, oh yeah, like we want us, if we don't support affordable housing, then you're a bad person and you're racist because it's not my backyard, because the only people who need affordable housing are minorities or black people or Spanish people. But that's not true. All kinds of people need affordable housing. Affordable housing isn't about race, but affordable housing, with the way what they've created at affordable housing, isn't about that at all. What they're doing is they create this transfer of wealth and property, and like mom and pop rental businesses, they're going to be a thing of the past. The only people that'll ever be able to rent a property or put a property up for rent is going to be like these giant developers are going to come up and gobble up all the property. BlackRock is taking over a majority, or not a majority, like a huge percentage. Sorry, I didn't mean to say majority. BlackRock is taking over a huge percentage of real estate since COVID, a huge percentage. And I wanted to, I guess I didn't have this in here. Bummer. And there was a statistic I wanted to share with you, but I fortunately misplaced it. And anyway, I'm going to get veered off too much on affordable housing. And that's a topic for another day. So back to Ganem. So Bridgeport is under this huge renaissance. And there's all these developers moving into town and buying up all the real estate and creating and gentrifying it. So it's very interesting. I'll get more into that at another day. But I'm going to start to wrap this up. I'm going to get into one more thing. Let me see. How long have we been going for? Like an hour. Okay. I got a couple more things I wanted to share with you. So, oh, I apologize. I got like frogs in my throat today. So, where was that article? So, Lamont, interestingly, Lamont is in India. Yes, folks. I find this picture. I find this picture like just so crazy. This venture clash. It's, you know, if a picture was worth 1,000 words, this would be it. So this is Indra Nori. And she is a part of like this group that is into this Infosys, which is an Indian company that outsources IT workers. So what it is there's a huge influx of another kind of immigrant. This immigrant coming in from India is to replace American workers and work cheaper. Now, again, this is not anything against India or Indian people. That's not the case. It's about the fact that these global think tanks are taking like Infosys and they're outsourcing jobs to cheaper labor that's coming out of India. And what they're doing is they're exploiting the Indian workers and they're exploiting the American workers. And I wrote an article about this. It's called Outsourced. And this is in my Substack. So it's outsourced. Human capital is a commodity, and just like cattle or fish, the human has no rights. And this goes through American workers, Indian workers. So what they're doing is these big giant companies are coming in, getting subsidies from the government, and then outsourcing jobs to cheaper labor. That's what this is in a nutshell. So the core philosophy of the Fourth Industrial Revolution, which when Lamont came in, his administrative partner there, Josh Cabal, if you guys remember him, he also is a partner with Annie Huntress Lamont, and he was, what was his position now? He was like the director of, I forget it, Josh Cabal. He was like his right-hand man. During the COVID press conferences, you were always hearing Josh Cabal helping Ned Lamont out, answering questions. He is a partner with Andy Huntress Lamont, was very instrumental in the semaphore, Thermo Fisher Scientific semaphore Mount Sinai Genomics, which fused this entity that ended up becoming Semaphore, and we had who was doing all the COVID testing and all the controversy, which was Annie Huntress Lamont's one of her holdings, who she later on had an interplay of Governor Lamont's policies, and then Semaphore providing the testing to the state of Connecticut. Huge controversy. So similar. Where does it end and where does it begin? Because I could totally go off into that whole field. Like, almost feel like, oh, we should really talk about this. I'll be here like for 5 hours and I'll never stop. So I'm not going to get all into Semaphore, Annie Lamont, Oak Healthcare FinTech, the relationship with Josh Cabal, Thermo Fisher Scientific, and Mount Sinai Genomics. I'm not going to get into all of that, where they became fused into the Semaphore, which is just like another a snake pit of corruption, and which had policy connected to what the state was doing. So now Lamont, this is a different thing. He is in India, which, why is our governor in India doing business in India? Why is he doing business in India? Where is, I hate WTNH. Gosh, I hate these websites. Where is the article on Lamont in India? He is in India, guys. This is true. But where that article just went to, anyway, let me go back to here, because we got a picture of him here. Here he is with, now this pictures really capture, to me, this is a meme. Who are the meme makers out there? You got to meme this, because this picture right here, that's a meme. That's who your governor is serving. Venture capitalists. That's his wife's business. This is what he's doing in India. He's working business for his own interests. I'd love to know how he got there. There's rumor that he has a private jet of his own, which I would believe, because, well, they got billions of dollars. I know a lot of it's not accounted for that we could see, but what we do see is while he was governor, while he just himself was governor, what we could see, he made $54 million during the controversy of Semaphore. He makes $54 million of money we can see. Never mind the Cayman Islands and the money he hides. Never mind all that. Never mind Semaphore and the money state tax dollars went into that. Never mind that. That's all irrelevant. None of it matters. Just, yeah, it's just great in Connecticut. We're just having a windfall of wonderful, wonderful things in Connecticut. Don't worry about it. The economy is fine. Don't worry about it. It's all good. Don't worry that you're double taxed in Connecticut thanks to Lamont's energy policies. Remember, folks? He couldn't get the tolls through, so what does he do? He taxes the trucks that bring in our goods. So all across the country, there's inflation, but Connecticut, we get extra thanks to terrible government policy. Yay! And all the citizens in Connecticut surely are voting to keep this stuff in office, right? No problems with absentee ballot stuffing anywhere. We don't want to talk about any of that. Here we go. This is a meme right here. Ned Lamont. Stumping for venture. Venture capital bucks is what's driving this governor. Venture capital money. And Tong had a building in Lamont. Tong had a building in Manchester that ironically sold for way more money than it was actually worth, the Tong building. You guys could go look that up online. It was a huge controversy. They're all in it. So, let me also put one more connection here, and then I'm going to sign off, even though I have so much more I could talk about, like Melissa Gillette. Let me put this birdie in your head before I sign off. Who is Melissa Gillette? Why was she handpicked by Lamont? So on first gander of Melissa Gillette, on very, very first gander on Melissa Gillette, it's very, very interesting what I find on Melissa Gillette on my first little peek-see. My first little peek-see of Melissa Gillette is this. Let me get to the bottom of this article, which you can find on my Substack. Please join me on Substack. If things go south and it gets censored, Substack's been really good. You can get all my content there. I am going to upload this video hopefully later today. If not today, maybe tomorrow. So here we go. Who is Marissa Gillette? Well, Lamont handpicked her. And you know, there's always a reason why. What is this? Oh, this is the energy storage Power America's Grid company. The energy storage company. And guess what? It said right here in her own biography, where we just were, Marissa Gillette was vice president. So Marissa Gillette was vice president of external relations for the energy storage industry. But, well, what's that, you say? Well, I was thinking the very same thing. What is the energy storage America's Grid here? What is this? What is the Energy Storage Association? It connects to a bigger national energy policy think tank. And if I can right here, their partnerships. Well, they have to partner with the firefighters, which is really, you know, because these energy battery storage systems and the solar panels, they're definitely a fire risk in your community. And let me tell you something, you need to start paying attention to the green aggregator. Connecticut has legislation right now, just wrote an article about that, about the public aggregator, which is a middleman. And what it basically does is it puts this entity in your town where they can build these storage facilities, these solar farms, wind farms, whatever you want to call it, so they can power up the AI, because the grid isn't going to be able to handle the AI that is not going to benefit the people, but is really a control grid that will house all of the data. The United States is in a rush to compete with China, who already has their population under digital surveillance, social credit scores, and all kinds of really draconian digital control over their citizens. The United States wants to catch up and get that kind of control digital AI grid going. Nothing about AI and this power infrastructure that's being built is a good thing, even if it's coming out of Trump. You guys got to have discernment here, because the AI is something to be concerned about. The data centers are something to be concerned about, and we can't just say yay, you know, be the opposite, like, oh, anything that Trump says, yeah, that's just great. Can't think like that. You need to always have discernment. You need to always question your government. At the end of the day, these are, you know, people who are surrounded by very wealthy, powerful people who have agendas, and it does not benefit the average American. So we need to always stand on our guard. So what they are part of is American Clean Power. So American Clean Power is a think tank. And so they are the policymakers that are coming up with the net zero, energy tax credits, and all this. So the American power, this is a huge industry. It's not about the earth or saving the planet. It's the exact opposite day for all of this stuff. Just like the Southern Poverty Law Center isn't out for people who are in poverty or to help for racial justice or whatever. They're not looking out for the little guy. They are looking to line their pockets Same thing with this Clean Power organization. So Marissa Gillette is handpicked by Lamont. I wonder where she comes from. I haven't really done a deep dive, but what I did look at, I found to be very, very interesting. And I also found it to be interesting that during the Pura reconfirmation hearings for Marissa Gillette, it came up that there were 57 pieces of legislation that are the reason why we have the public benefits charge. So since she's been here, Melissa Gillette, now our energy prices have been going up, so it's been awful in Connecticut, right? But it's gotten so bad since COVID, since her tenure. So she comes in 2019, and our energy bills skyrocket. And then a FOIA recently comes out. So the Hartford Current FOIA'd and found out that Marissa Gillette was having conversations with Jonathan Steinberg, chair of the Energy and Technology Committee, that looked to be that she is definitely helping with policymaking. Well, she sure is. Yeah, okay. Am I in the room and having it see it? No. But she is. She's caught. And it's obvious. And there's supposed to be 5 board members on Pura, but there's only 3. Not that I think Pura is a good thing at all. You know what I think we should do with Pura? We should break up Eversource United Aluminum Company, and we should look back into our older laws where we have municipal electric utility. I think we should start to look at that older law, and we should look about how do we get back our power structure and decentralize it and have it controlled through local municipalities without letting it get corrupted, because local municipalities are being centralized now and controlled by like town managers, town planners, and then answering to Hartford. First selectmen are now answering to agendas that are coming out of the Connecticut Conference of Municipalities. All these organizations that interfere with the basic relationship that citizens should be having with their government, where you have the odds are stacked against the regular person, because now we have the era of non-governmental organizations, nonprofit organizations whose sole focus is to drive this agenda and these narratives. So, it's a crazy, crazy time. So yeah, Connecticut is a circus, and that's all for today, guys. I gotta sign off. Whew. There's a hearing tomorrow, which I will be at. I'm going to be up in Hartford tomorrow, hopefully, but I will be covering that and maybe testifying in it. I never want to wait all day long to testify in some of these hearings. It's just so much of a pain. I don't know. Anyway, I'm signed up to testify, so we'll see how that goes, if I'm even able to, because a lot of times what they do, they don't tell you. You sign up to testify for a bill. They never tell you what time you're going to testify. They never give you that information until like that day. Then you know where you are. They make the process difficult, and all of their experts, all of their people know when they're going to testify, know when they're going to go up, and then all the citizens are left second fiddle waiting for hours and hours and hours and hours to testify on. There is so many bills coming out of Hartford. There's something happening in public health. Senator Anwar wants to add fluoride to our water. I don't know how that bill is progressing, but Senator Anwar wants to put more fluoride in the water, even though a federal court ruled that fluoride is a neurotoxin. Our government wants to put more fluoride in the water. This is the circus that is Connecticut. And on that note, I'm out of here till we meet again. See you guys.